next chapter, and that's on Reish Mem Gimel. Because you missed us. We missed you on must have been Tuesday. But we finished off that chapter on Torah, and now we're up to one of what might be the last chapter of the book. Yes, it's the last chapter of the book on Yirat Shamayim. Okay, we're gonna have to decide what to do next. Okay, Shar Yirat Shamayim, Ksiv b'Torah. It is written in the Holy Torah as follows: V'ata, now, Israel, the Jewish people, Ma Hashem Elokecha shoel mi'imach. What does God ask or request of you? Ki'im l'yira es Hashem Elokecha, other than fearing God, your God. That's really the essential request that God has. Fear me. Have awe of me. Be God-fearing. The Gemara says, I imagine somewhere within the context of this chapter, he'll bring it. The Gemara says, well, is that such a small matter? Fearing God, that's such a small matter. It's not such a simple task. What is God asking for you? Just to fear Him. That's all God is asking. Is that such a big deal? Where it says, is that a small matter? Well, what is the Torah putting it this way? Like, what is God asking you? Just to fear Him. Well, so it's like a small matter that He's asking to fear? The Gemara says that when Rabbi, the great Talmudist, under whose auspices the Mishnah of the Talmud was penned, when he was passing away, his students gathered around his deathbed and they asked him for a blessing before he died. And he said, "May your fear of God be like your fear of flesh and blood, of man." So the students were taken aback. Kuli, hi. This is the last bracha, the parting bracha that you have for us, Rabbi, before you go? He said, yes, you should know, it's no small matter. It's no small matter at all, this fear of God. And you should know, because when a person is about to sin, he looks around and sees whether a person's looking, but he doesn't look around to consider that Hashem is looking. So he doesn't really fear God, right? So he says, may your fear of God be like your fear of man. So you see that it's not such a simple statement here. Like, come on, Jews. In the end of the day, what's the big deal? What am I asking of you? Just to fear me. Well, that's some small matter. We see it's not a small matter at all. In any case, that's what this chapter is devoted to. Figuring out, trying to learn more about this notion of fearing God. Uksiv, and it says furthermore, Es Hashem Elokecha Tirah. To your God you shall have awe. Uksiv, and it says, Yiras Hashem Hi Oitzaro. That fear of God is like one's otzar, one's treasury, one's source of wealth. And an otzar is also a granary or a storehouse, a storeroom. V'omru, and the sages said in Masechet Shabbos, Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis, Eino Kadosh Baruch Hu bo'olamo elo yirat shamayim bilvad. God in this world has nothing other than the fear of God. I mean, that's what God is really interested in, the fear of God. As it says, V'yomer la'odam hen yiras Hashem hi hoichma. And he said to man, this is in Eov, Hen yiras Hashem hi hochma. Fear of God, that's wisdom. So since wisdom is very important to God, and to God, fear of God is the essence of wisdom, so that's what God is interested in. Hen mashma achas. The use of the word hen in this verse, v'yomer ladam hen yiras Hashem, Yes, the word hen, mashma achas, implies the meaning of one. Why? Sheken beloshen yavonis korin echas hen. Because in Greek, that's how you say one. Does anybody know Greek?
Why would it be red?
Yeah.
Why?
That is Greek to me.
Yeah.
But, and why should we assume that the well, it's not a Torah verse, but it's a book in Tanakh, the book of Job. Why should we assume that Job intended to convey a meaning in Greek? But we do find a precedent for this type of thing. It says in the Torah regarding the tefillin, it calls tefillin totafot. Totafot. And the Gemara asks, what's the meaning of this word totafot? That's not a Hebrew word. So the Gemara says, totafot comes from the word tot and fot, which are foreign languages in African languages, which means two and two, referring to four. The four paragraphs of the Torah that we write on the scrolls inside the tefillin. One scroll, one scroll with 4 paragraphs on the one scroll in the hand tefillin, and then 4 separate parchments for each of the 4 paragraphs in the head tefillin, for a total of 5. But there are 4 paragraphs. So the Gemara says that comes from totafot. When God uses the word totafot in the Torah, referring to the tefillin, which has the 4 parshas, he uses a word which is a combination of different African languages, which means 2 and 2. Very strange.
Yeah. Okay.
Huh? Yeah, what about it? Yeah, Sadhus, but that's not such a kasha because that was yeah. Yeah, or Aramaic. Anan Sahadi. So this Sahad is to testify.
So why the use
Anan
of a
Sahadi.
Greek word?
What's that?
So why the use of a Greek word
It's
for
Greek.
one and
It's Greek to me.
yeah, but why? Why in Joe in here?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm saying I don't understand. I don't know.
So non-Jews know that wisdom comes from that as well. I don't know.
It's an interesting idea. It's quite odd. Yeah. The idea of tefillin is to dedicate ourselves entirely to God, using all of our resources to serve God. And it seems to me that there's probably a correlation between the fact that in the tefillin we have a total of 5 parchments, like I mentioned, 1 on the arm and 4 on the head, corresponding to the 5 senses. The one is the tactile sense of touch on your arm, which is the extension of your sense of feeling and touch, tactile. And then the 4 in the head, which is the source of the 4 other senses, sight, hearing, smell, and taste. In any case, V'amar Rava, b'shah shemachnisen odam ledin, omrim lo. Rava says, when a person is taken to be judged by the heavenly court, he's asked, among other questions, nosaso v'nosato be'emuna, were you engaged in business in a trustworthy manner? Question number 1. Question number 2. Kavato itim leTorah, did you fix regular times for Torah study? Question number 3. Osakta b'firia urivia, were you engaged in the mitzvah of being fruitful and multiplying? 4. Tzipisa liyeshua, did you have hope for the redemption? 5. Pilpalta b'hoichma, right? Did you engage in in-depth Torah study? Remember, the author addressed this point at the end of the previous chapter. He quoted this source as a seeming contradiction to what he was writing. And he brought 2 explanations, that this does not mean Talmudic hair splitting. What it means is, right, to be understanding something thoroughly. Alternatively, he meant to compare different sources, one to the other, for the purpose of learning, but not going, we're not going into a depth of learning which is paralyzing. I think that was 5. Hevanto davar mitoch davar. Did you understand one matter from another? Meaning, did you imply active intellect to try and understand things correctly? Va'afilu achik. And one second, nevertheless, even if the answer to all of these very critical questions is yes, if his fear of God was like a storehouse for him, meaning he had a storehouse full of Yirat Shamayim, good, everything is fine, everything will be accepted. Lo. But if not, no. The implication is, even if the answer to all of these questions is yes, but he did not have Yirat Shamayim, then he's not going to pass the test. Why? Let's go over them for a minute. Were you honest in business practice? If the answer is yes, but not because I was God-fearing, but because I wanted my honest reputation to earn me more clients and therefore more income, no good. Kavatit in the Torah, did you fix time for Torah? If the answer is yes, I did it, but only because I was supposed to, or only because my friends and family and business associates would only consider dealing with me if I was properly functioning in the community. So again, it was self-interested, but not for God. Even if you learn Torah, red light, no good. Asakta Piviriya, were you engaged in being fruitful and multiply? Well, if the answer is yes, but it was really not about being fruitful and multiply, it was about the enjoyment, yes, that doing so gives, or to have children because of honor or position, or to have children in order that they should take care of me in my old age, and all that stuff, but not in order to raise them as God-fearing individuals to perpetuate the Torah. Red light. Tzipita the Yeshua, did you have hope for the redemption? The answer is yes, but not for God-fearing reasons, but because I wanted to have a vacation already. Trudging through life is too difficult. No good. Pilpata b'chokhmah, were you involved in in-depth learning? If the answer is yes, but it's in order to display to everybody how intelligent I am, red light. Havanta davar October, same thing. So you see that all of these very wonderful things, even if the answer is yes, you might still do it for the wrong reason. And therefore, that's tantamount to saying no. Yirat Shamayim is the main ingredient to everything then. Right? So I think that we can reflect that back to the original teaching he opened up the chapter with, which is, Ma Hashem Elokecha shoel machkim liyira. What does God ask from you other than fearing Him? That's really the common thread between running in everything. That's the common thread that strings the pearls of the Torah. Because you can eat kosher without being God-fearing. You can keep Shabbos without being God-fearing. You can do all of the mitzvahs without being God-fearing. In which case, you're left with very little as far as the mitzvah is concerned. Yirat Shamayim brings the whole thing to life. Mashal la'od. Oh, what was you going to say?
I heard a different shot how to look.
Go ahead.
The natural sciences of the world, biology, science, mathematics. You never heard that shot? Engage in the sciences of the world.
I'm missing the point. In other words, God is saying, "Did you do that? Because you should." I missed the point.
That's how I learned. Hashem wants you to know the knowledges of geology.
Those
knowledges.
Pilpalta b'chokhmah means, did you dabble into other areas of knowledge aside from Torah? Where did you hear that from?
You can still do
I
that.
understood all the time. I don't know. That's how it's Torah.
No, interesting. I've never. I mean,
How did you?
no. Pashup Pshat Chokhmah is Torah. Chokhmah is Torah.
Well,
You
Chochmah
could
is
still
Torah.
definitely do all of
They
that
have it already.
without.
Right, Kavita in the Torah is for Torah. Right?
Did you fix times for Torah?
Besides that, right?
And now having fixed times for Torah, did you
because they
learn
say-
it? Did you engage yourself in
They
it?
say Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky knew about the stars and all. They say so he knew.
Yeah.
The story he said this stars.
Yeah. I'm not denying that this is a possible explanation. You just asked me whether I heard it before, and I said no. The author here in the previous chapter also understood Pilpulta B'Chochmah means did you learn Torah Be'iyun? And he said, yeah, and he says, and he asked the and what? Pilpulta B'Chochmah means did you learn Torah Be'iyun? Yeah. No, I'm just saying. You see from here, he understands that Pilpulta B'Chochmah is referring to Torah. Yeah. And he therefore asked the question. It would seem from here that we're required to learn Be'iyun. And he said earlier we should not be doing Talmudic hair splitting. So he reconciled the seeming contradiction. My point is just that you see the author here also understood. I think that's the Pashup shot. Now, but like he's saying, and you're saying as well, if a person learns these, a person can learn these other types of fields of wisdom in order to gain a greater appreciation of God and His creation and the way He regulates and runs the world, and if that brings, and if that brings a person to Yirat Shamayim, or he does so with Yirat Shamayim, then that would be praiseworthy.
Because I shouldn't put these knowledges in the world
Mm-hmm.
for a reason.
There's plenty. Most people that study those subjects not for that reason at all.
Right.
Just for Chochmah purposes, just
Right.
Chochmah.
Yeah.
You should come to God through those. Yes.
I heard an idea once that the menorah, the seven branches of the menorah actually represent the seven forms of worldly wisdom, and and each of the arms of the candelabrum of the menorah actually form the base of the light of the flame, which is the Torah. So that all of these different realms of wisdom, they come from the same source and they branch out, but they all have within it the flame of the Torah, and they're subservient to the flame of the Torah. They're secondary in importance, clearly. They're secondary in importance to the Torah, but they also have a role in Torah. Like we said, Yefet v'yishkon ba'od Hashem. That the beauty of Yafet has a place to dwell within the tents of Shem, which is when it is understood that the beauty of arts and music and the sciences and everything that Yafet excels in, there's a place for all of that in the world when it's within the confines of Oil Hashem, the tents of Torah. You and I are really going head to head today. What did you hear differently?
That the Torah will be written in a different in the language of Greek, in Aramaic, I think.
Greek.
Will dwell in the tents of Yefes.
No.
Aramaic, I think. Aramaic or something.
The Gemara, I think, in Eruvin discusses whether you could write the Torah in Yavanis because Yavanis is a very beautiful language which is befitting for the Torah. But I don't see that as contradicting this. Then in a way, I think that's another manifestation of this, saying that the beauty of Yafes can be used as a tool to serve the Torah. It's quite interesting. Yeah, we do find that Chazal did think very highly of Greek. Of Greek wisdom and the Greek language, ancient Greece. But I suppose that's the difference, that when that wisdom and when that aesthetic beauty is used to support and to make more grand the Torah, then it's something which is beautiful. But when it's pitted against the Torah, then it's something which is very pitiable. Yeah. Right. So again, there's a place for that, but within Oil Hashem. not in place of Oil Hashem. That's the difference.
Right.
Mashal Adam Sha'amar L'Shlucho, about midway through the paragraph. This, at the beginning of the line. This can be compared, a mashal, L'Adam, to a person, Sha'amar L'Shlucho, who said to his representative, his emissary, Ha'eleli kor chitin la'aliyah, take up for me a certain quantity of wheat up to the attic, to store there. Holach v'he'elelo. So he went and he did it. He put the wheat in the attic. Amar lei, he said to him, the master, Eraftali behen kav chamotin. Did you mix into this wheat a certain quantity of chamotin? What is chamotin? It's an inferior type of biological material, but it's used to preserve the wheat. It might serve as like the process for purpose of what is it called like a preservative, an incandescent. What is it called? When you have when you buy your stony cereal, you open up the package and there are little bags of some material inside. They absorb the moisture. I think it's called a decadent or something. There's a term for that. Yeah. Let me say it in English. It's a type of but it's called something like an incandescent, dissident, something like that. A D and a C. It manages the moisture. It absorbs the moisture. Anyway, Omar they laugh. The servant said, "No. You didn't tell me to put up you only told me to put up wheat. You didn't tell me that I should put these hamatim in the wheat." Amar lei, so he said to him, Muta avim lo eleta. In that case, it would have been better if you didn't put the wheat up there. Why? Because it's going to rot. It's going to rot. The implication here is, of course, wheat is a metaphor for Torah, and he's saying if you're going to be engaged in Torah, that Torah has to be mixed with Yirat Shamayim in order for that Torah to be preserved. And if you're not going to learn Torah with Yirat Shamayim, if you're going to learn Torah without Yirat Shamayim, according to this parable, this analogy, right, it would be better not to learn than to learn without Yirat Shamayim. Which is interesting because we have another source which says a person should always learn Shalol Lishma because
then they'll come.
Yes, through learning Shalol Lishma, he'll also come to Lishma. Maybe the difference would be that when we say learning Lo Lishma, it means he's not learning entirely L'Shem Shemaim, but at least partially Shem Shemaim, meaning he's learning because he believes in God, he believes the Torah is a good book, and he wants to keep the laws of the Torah and believe the beliefs of the Torah and so forth and so on. But he's more interested in the money, in the prestige, in the girl, in whatever other thing that he thinks is the object of his learning. Yeah? So there we say, you know what? Learn Shalol Lishma, because that small degree which really is the Shema, even if it's only secondary or tertiary importance, that you're doing it for God, that ultimately that'll come to take precedence over the inferior intention that you have. But if a person has no intention for God-fearing whatsoever, so better you not even start. Maybe that would be the difference. Omar Rabbi Bar Bar Huna, it was taught by Rabbi Bar Huna, Kol Adam sheyesh bo Torah ve'ein bo yirat shamayim, any person who has Torah but he doesn't have yirat shamayim, domei legizbar shemasaruloi maftechois hapnimiyos, he can be compared to a type of a treasurer who was entrusted with the keys to the inner chamber, umaftechois hachitzonios loy masuloi, but the gates to the outer chamber, the keys to the gates of the outer chamber, they didn't give him. Behei oyel. So how is he going to go up to the treasury? Yeah? So he has Torah, but he doesn't have Yirat Shamayim. That's interesting. So he has the source, but he doesn't have the venue. because he doesn't have the Yirat Shamayim. He's like the treasurer who has the key to the inner chamber, but he's locked out of the chamber on the outside. So what's it going to do for him? It's quite interesting. You might think it should go the other way around. He's given access to the external. He's given external access, but he can't go into the internal chambers. Because he only has learning and he doesn't have the essence of Yirat Shamayim. But Chazal didn't do it that way. They said the other way around, which is hard to understand. Because if he has Torah without Yirat Shamayim, that's compared to having the key to the inner chamber, but being locked out. So he has Torah, but no Yirat Shamayim? Or he doesn't even have Torah? I think the pshat is he doesn't have any Torah. Because where's the Torah? The Torah is the treasure in the inside. And he was given a key to the inner chamber. The key is his ability to learn. Even though he has the ability to learn, since he learns without Yirat Shamayim, he doesn't have Torah. He's locked out the outside. Because if you go the way I was originally suggesting, you'd say, he's got Torah and not Yirat Shamayim. So he was given access to the outer chamber, but not the inner one. That implies that the Torah he has. He just doesn't have the inner dimension of it. Right? Because he's missing the Yirat Shamayim. Torah he has, the Yirat Shamayim he doesn't have. But Chazal turned it the other way around and say, you know what? Even Torah he doesn't have. He might have the key. He might have the key. But what is the key? The key is not the Torah. The key is just the tool to access what's the valuable. And the valuable, so according to this, he's got nothing. He doesn't even have Torah. All he's got is the key, which gives him access to Torah. But since he doesn't have Yirat Shamayim, he can't get inside, even to the Torah. So he's left neither with Torah or Yirat Shamayim. See, at the Chazal, everything is so very carefully worded and thought through.
I think they're both true in some ways. That fear, that fear of Hashem can bring you to Torah, but I think also Torah can bring you to. I think they both.
Yeah, Torah can bring
There
you
are
to
people
Yirat
who-
Shamayim.
Yeah.
Torah
But
can bring you
then-
to you.
But then people can also come to that, I think, to some extent without the Torah first. Through other ways, they can just either through like divine providence or through study of that, they can come to an understanding of Hashem through that, and then come to conclude, then find out where their way into like Torah in other ways through a different route. I think they're sort of. It's like a front door and a back. You can come through into like through a front door or through another door, and then
It sounds like you're saying that a person can attain Yirat Shamayim
through Torah or
through a way which is not Torah. Is that what you're saying?
I think that there are people there out who don't have Torah but have Yirat Hashemayim. They come to accept that Hashem is true, and they don't know what to do, and that they have like this. I want to know what to do. I don't know what to do, and like they exist in this limbo of.
So there, I guess the person that might be compared to a person who's given the key to the outer gate, but not the inner gate.
Yeah. But I'm saying there are people, but then you have the opposite, that you can.
That might even
have
be
a lot
better.
of knowledge of Torah, but you don't.
So that's a person who has the key to the inner gate, but not the outer gate.
Yeah.
We would want a key to both.
Yeah.
We would want Yirat Shamayim and Torah.
Yeah.
And the both would complement each other. The Yirat Shamayim would help your Torah, and the Torah would help Yirat Shamayim, and you'd be given the key to both gates.
Yeah.
But if you have the key to one gate alone, you're limited. But according to this, it would seem, according to the analogy, it would be actually better to have Yirat Shamayim without Torah than to have Torah without Yirat Shamayim.
Right, but I'm saying the synthesis is that you can.
Is that right?
I'm saying the
He was given, one second, Shemasru lo maftechos apnimius, maftechos hitzonios lo masru lo. Why? Because he doesn't have Yirat Shamayim. So he ain't got nothing. That was my point. He's got nothing.
But I'm saying
The other person who's got Yirat Shamayim at least has the key to the outer gate.
Right.
Now, that can be developed further, and it should be developed further with Torah.
But I'm saying that's what Chazal is saying. Chazal say that they're basically sort of saying that you will get your Yirat Hashemayim whether through Torah. It's not quite like, okay, yes. What he's saying is that okay, if you don't have Yirat Hashemayim and you just study Torah, like nothing, like you're not there yet, like until that comes. But what Chazal add
But there's two different points here.
is,
There could be that there's two different things here. I might not understand you entirely, but it seems to me from what you're saying that there might be two different things here, and maybe I blurred the distinction between the two. But I think it's fair to make a distinction between what we were talking about, learning the Shema and Yirat Shamayim.
right.
Learning Chazal say you should learn the Shema. But you should learn. But even if you're not learning the Shema, you should learn not the Shema in order to come to Shema.
Yeah.
That's related to Yirat Shamayim, and I think that's why I made the connection in the text. But arguably, you could make a distinction. Learning the Shema means learning for the right purpose in mind, and it's true that Chazal say even if you're not learning with the right intention in mind, you'll get to learn with the right intention. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the only way to get to Yirat Shamayim is through Torah, through learning Torah. However, it seems to me that to really develop a proper degree of Yirat Shamayim, you'll ultimately have to come on to Torah. It might be learning the text of Torah, or it might be learning the ideas of Torah teachings, but that's also Torah. Like
Yes.
like Chazal, but Pirkei Avos say, "Ena meretz chasid."
You're right. You have people in Europe. They learn Torah, but they Chal Shabbos. They just did it for the knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
the gymnastics of the Torah, the beauty, to make the brain work. They didn't keep Shabbos. They didn't. Now you don't have such people.
I don't know where I heard. Maybe it was from someone here in the yeshiva that there were people in South Africa who were former Talmudic students who would spend their Shabbos afternoons learning Gemara on the balcony, smoking cigarettes. Because they enjoy the intellectual activity of learning Talmud on Shabbos.
And today they do it even today in Japan. They learn. I don't know if you heard.
Who does? The Japanese learn Talmud on Shabbos? What do you mean?
Oh yeah, well, I don't know, but they're learning the Talmud. It's written in Japanese.
Is that right?
Well,
yeah, there's a whole article, a couple. I don't know how many.
Is that right?
They wrote the Japanese.
Develops the mind.
Because they see that the Israelis are very smart. They want to know why they're so smart. It must be from the Talmud.
Wow, if the Israelis
were complete guy. I mean, maybe one converted, a few did convert from them, but it's written in. The Talmud is written, and they're studying the Talmud.
In any case, let's try and finish off this paragraph before we have to break. Machris Rabbi Yaba, I believe it's about 3/4 of the way down. After a period, it says Machris. The line starts with the word lo, behei, oil. Do you have it?
yeah.
Machris Rabbi Yanai was proclaimed by Rabbi Yanai. Haval al delesle darta. It's too bad to the one who has no darta. Who's a darta? V'tara the darta ovid. He's got no passageway. He's got no home. He's got no room. Yeah. V'tara the darta ovid. But he makes a door to the room. He's busy making a door, but he ain't got no entranceway. Perush, darta chotzer. A darta, he says, is a courtyard. Tara is a shar. That's the gate. I was calling it a door. Ubar Rabbi Yanai, Lomar Rabbi Yanai is saying, Mi she'ein lo chotzer ma yo'elo she'yaseh shar b'chinam. Person who's got no space, yeah. So what is he doing? Making a door, making a gate. Kacha Torah eina ela shar likones bo liot shamayim. So Torah is like a gateway going into the chamber of Yirat Shamayim. But if you have no Yirat Shamayim, what's the point in making the gate? Again, the gate, it would be compared to the tool. Just the process of learning is like a tool. But the purpose of it is to get into the courtyard of Yirat Shamayim. V'omar lehu Rava l'Rabbanan, and Rava said to the sages in Yuma, B'metusa minaychu, excuse me, sirs, lo tirtu tarte gehinnom. You can't inherit two Gehinnams. Liyois yegim ve'amelim b'Torah ba'olam hazeh, to be asserting yourself, learning Torah in this world, v'lo tekayemuha v'tirshu gehinnom b'moischem, and not keep the Torah that you're learning, such that you will be inheriting Gehinnom in your death. Ubechayechon lo nehenesem mizeh ha'olam mechmas Torah chalimud. In this world, you didn't enjoy this world because of the exertion in Torah. Uvemoischem toivdu me'al meda'aseh. And in the world to come, in your death, you're going to lose the world to come. So if you're learning L'Shem Shamayim, if you're learning Shanat L'Shem Shamayim, it's horrible. Why? Because you're exposing yourself to a difficult lifestyle here, and you're not going to get the world to come there. Why? Because you're expending the rigors of Torah study, but for the wrong reason, and therefore you're not going to get to Olam Haba. That's what he seems to be saying. So if you're going to learn, so learn the Shem Shamayim, learn with Yirat Shamayim. So at least the suffering that's involved in learning Torah here will have the good result of going to Olam Haba. Otherwise, you're going to end up missing out, suffering here and never getting there. Okay, let's stop here.